You ever have one of those moments where time doesn't slow down? It stops? Where the air goes thick and the only thing louder than the applause is the sound of your own heartbeat? That was me, standing in 3-inch heels under a magnolia chandelier at the Charleston Club, holding a flute of champagne that suddenly tasted like battery acid, while my father handed over the business I built to my sister as a wedding gift. Yes, you heard that right. Thomas and Company Interiors, a boutique design firm with a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Over $9.4 million in active contracts last year, 12 full-time designers, a workshop in Mount Pleasant, and a waitlist that included a retired senator, 3 Bravo reality stars, and 1 steel magnate's third wife. I had logged 18-hour days, Sunday site visits, and back-to-back vendor crises through hurricanes and heat waves. Brielle? She took selfies next to swatchboards and called it branding. But tonight, in front of 200 guests and a 4-tier lemon lavender cake, Dad raised his glass, and her glass, and said, "As a token of our pride and belief in your future, Brielle, your mother and I have transferred majority ownership of Thomas and Kwon to you. It's yours now, sweetheart." The applause came before the words even landed. I didn't clap. I just looked down at the champagne, then at the peony boutonniere pinned to my dress. It was sliding sideways. Brielle squealed, clapped her hands like a toddler at a birthday pony ride. Sebastian, her brand new husband, leaned forward, smiling in that polite, frozen way Southern men do when they're trying to hide they've just seen a car wreck. And me? I put the glass down, walked out through the side doors, and didn't return. Not for cake, not for photos, not for the bouquet toss or the bourbon bar Dad had flown in from Kentucky. I stood under a palm tree in the courtyard, barefoot, holding my heels like weapons, wondering if it was possible to scream underwater. You should probably know a little about me. I'm Zara Thomas, 36. Quiet. Sometimes too quiet. The type of woman people call stable when they mean overlooked. I studied architecture at SCAD, got a master's in interior design, and can draft a full gut renovation plan by hand if you hand me a latte in 4 hours. I can also tell you the difference between 17 shades of white paint without a swatch. Brielle. She majored in something called luxury lifestyle branding at a school that had a rooftop pool and no textbooks. She has 1.2 million Instagram followers, most of whom believe she's an interior stylist, which apparently involves a lot of standing in front of flower walls, with her chin slightly tilted. When we started the firm, I was 27, fresh out of grad school and full of ideas. Dad bankrolled the launch with a $250,000 seed loan. He called it my test. I paid it back in full with 6% annual interest within 18 months. Brielle joined 2 years later when her influencer collab with a sunscreen brand fell through. She brought the face, as Dad put it. I brought the numbers. We grew from 4 projects a year to 42. By year 5, we were clearing $2 million in profit annually. But somehow, the more we grew, the more invisible I became. Clients called to ask for Brielle. Press releases used her headshots. Dad joked at Thanksgiving that I was the engine, but Brielle was the showroom. I swallowed it, again and again, because I thought it was temporary, because I believed in the work, because I thought maybe, just maybe, at some point, someone would say, "Zara did this. This is hers." Instead, I got a wedding toast. That night, I left the reception and walked home, in heels, 2.5 miles, past live oaks and gas lanterns and porches glowing with laughter that didn't belong to me. I passed a house I'd renovated 2 years ago, one of my proudest projects. a clapboard Victorian that used to be sagging and beige. I turned it into a coastal dream. Navy shutters, oyster shell path, a 2-story porch that wrapped like an embrace. The woman who lived there had cried when she saw it finished. "You made it feel like a story," she'd said. Brielle posted a photo in front of it, captioned, "My latest vision." That night, I sat on my sofa in silence, shoes still on, and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. My phone buzzed. Messages from old college friends, distant cousins, even a contractor I hadn't worked with in years. Wow, didn't see that coming. "You okay? Wait, I thought it was your firm?" The one message I didn't expect came just after midnight. "Sebastian, I didn't know until he said it. You didn't either, did you?" I didn't reply. Not that night. But something shifted in me, a quiet line in the sand. I thought of my grandmother, who raised me every summer while Dad and Mom took Brielle to fashion camps in Milan. Grandma used to say, "If they give away your place at the table, build your own damn dining room." The next morning, I opened a new browser tab and typed, "How to start your own interior design firm, South Carolina." A week later, I met with a lawyer. I learned what I already suspected. The business was incorporated under Dad's name and had been quietly restructured last year to include succession provisions, the transfer to Brielle, legal, final, neat as a bow. I also learned something else. My non-compete clause, signed years ago, had expired last month. I remember walking out of that meeting feeling like someone had pressed reset on my spine. My breath felt taller, my eyes sharper, my heartbeat focused. Not angry, not yet, but awake. I went home. I pulled out the sketchbook I hadn't touched in a year. I opened to a fresh page and wrote 3 letters in bold black ink. ZT, Studio ZT, not Thomas and Company, not family, not gifted, built. The Monday after Brielle's wedding, the Charleston sun came up just like it always did, golden, syrupy, dripping over the iron balconies and live oak trees that lined our historic street. But something inside me had shifted. The world still smelled like magnolia and old brick, but I could no longer breathe it in the same way. By Tuesday, the design studio was buzzing with congratulations for the new Mrs. Brielle Thomas Kensington, now apparently both a bride and a business mogul. I took my coffee in the back room and smiled when I had to, but most of the time I just stared at my computer screen and wondered what I was even doing there anymore. Thomas and Company Interiors wasn't mine. It never really had been. Brielle had been given the majority share in a business I helped scale from a 2-person operation above a bakery to a firm with 12 employees, a quarterly net of $470,000, and contracts with 3 boutique hotel chains across the Southeast. But our father decided to hand her the crown over champagne and cake, like it was some sort of party favor. And now here I was, still showing up at 8 o'clock sharp every morning, while Brielle supervised from home. Home being her new 3-story house in the Battery, a wedding gift from the groom's parents. Brielle posted a photo that week. Her lounging in a white linen robe, sipping an oat milk latte, captioned, "CEO Life." She didn't even spell it out, just dropped 3 letters like she had earned them. It was Sebastian, her husband of all people, who knocked on the door of my private office that Thursday afternoon. He looked out of place in our studio, too formal, crisp navy blazer over a slate gray shirt. He always dressed like he was headed to close a hedge fund deal, not to pick up his wife for lunch. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, glancing back toward the hallway like he wasn't sure he should be here. I gestured to the armchair across from my desk. "I figured I should talk to you directly," he began, fingers interlaced, voice low. This whole thing with the business. I didn't know about it in advance. Your dad didn't tell me. Brielle didn't either. I found out during the toast, just like you. I didn't say anything. He went on. I thought she was just taking more of an influencer role, posting content, talking about design trends. But then she showed me the ownership paperwork. My eyes narrowed. You've seen the documents? I asked. He nodded. Full transfer of 51% shares, retroactively dated 2 weeks before the wedding. It was worse than I thought. She didn't want to give you a chance to contest it, he added. Said you wouldn't make a fuss if it was already signed, sealed, and framed with a bow on top. He paused. I just wanted you to know that. I don't think it's right. And for what it's worth, I've seen your projections, the expansion ideas, the digital architecture models, that modular design line for senior living spaces. My brows lifted. You've read my internal proposals? He smiled, a little sheepish. They were left open on the office iMac, and I couldn't help myself. They're visionary. I'd spent the last year refining those plans, diversifying our portfolio, bringing in scalable technology partnerships, even identifying a venture firm in Atlanta that might be willing to back a pilot showroom. No one had taken them seriously. Not Brielle, not Dad. Certainly not the board, which Brielle now chaired thanks to that majority stake. But Sebastian had seen them, and better yet, he understood them. So what are you saying? I asked slowly, weighing every word. That you think I should go rogue? He chuckled, shaking his head. I'm saying you already built the bones of something far bigger than this place, and if you ever decided to flesh it out, you wouldn't have to do it alone. I tilted my head. And what would Brielle say if she knew you were here? He didn't blink. She won't. And frankly, if she's so confident in her reign, she shouldn't be worried. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the contours of possibility stretch out in front of me like fabric waiting to be cut. I'm building something of my own, I said carefully, for the first time aloud. Want to help? He nodded once. No hesitation. I do. That night, I took a long walk around the French Quarter. Not the tourist part, but the neighborhood where the gas lamps flicker and everything smells like gardenia and rain. I thought about all the times I'd played nice. When I'd let Brielle take credit for color palettes I agonized over. When I watched her charm her way through investor meetings using slides, I'd stayed up all night perfecting. When Dad once told me, without irony, "You're the brains, but she's the brand," as if being the brand required sacrifice or actual work. The next morning, I scheduled a private lunch with Marianne Selwyn, a former client turned mentor who now sat on the board of a mid-size angel investment group out of Atlanta. She'd loved my work at the Grand Cypress Hotel project 2 years prior and had once said, half-jokingly, "If you ever strike out on your own, call me first." So I called. We met at a discreet restaurant in Mount Pleasant, one with private booths and menus that didn't bother listing prices. She looked at me over her glasses as I laid out my pitch. A modular interiors company focused on sustainable design, boutique hospitality partnerships, and modernizing high-end spaces without gutting their character. I showed her the blueprints, the branding ideas, the vendor relationships I'd quietly maintained on the side. She sipped her wine and asked, "You going to let your sister keep the firm you built?" I smiled. "She already has it." "Then build something that makes hers look like a showroom at Pottery Barn." She pledged $400,000 in seed capital on the spot. By the end of the week, I'd registered Studio ZT LLC, retained a quiet team of advisors, and rented a workspace in a renovated cotton warehouse near the marina. Raw brick, open rafters, big windows. It didn't need much. just vision, and a CEO. Sebastian formally resigned from Thomas and Company. Interiors with a 3-line email citing irreconcilable conflicts of interest. Within 48 hours, he signed the founding documents for Studio ZT as its first chief executive officer. It was legal, it was quiet, and it was mine. In the background, Brielle remained oblivious. She posted a video tour of her new office, complete with blush velvet chairs and a neon sign that said, "Think like a boss." I watched it with a glass of wine in one hand and the first Studio ZT client contract in the other, a 5-location renovation deal for a national boutique hotel chain worth just over $2.1 million. She had her neon sign. I had a business. Let the game begin. I didn't launch Studio ZT with champagne or confetti. I launched it with a simple key. One morning in late April, while the jasmine bloomed heavy over the garden walls in Charleston, I unlocked the door to a modest 2-story space off King Street. Exposed brick, bad plumbing, and promise. It smelled like dust and potential, and I breathed it in like air after drowning. Studio ZT wasn't just a rebellion, it was my resurrection. I'd spent the 6 weeks since the wedding in a silent, seething kind of productivity. My days were full of mock-ups and late-night wireframes. My nights were spreadsheets and calls to quiet, powerful people I'd once designed for. The kind of clients who didn't post about their bathroom renovations, but handed out trust funds like mints. And they remembered me. One of them, Louise Cantrell, heiress to a chain of boutique hotels stretching from Savannah to Aspen, asked me bluntly over lunch, "Do you want to build something, or just be someone's silent partner forever?" 2 weeks later, she transferred $750,000 in seed capital to an LLC under my name. No drama, no questions, just trust. She said it was her way of investing in symmetry. You balance out the madness of this industry. I cried in my car after that meeting. Not from the money. I had my own savings, stock options, retirement portfolios. But from the validation. I'd been building my father's name into a legacy for 15 years. All I ever got was a tighter leash and a smaller spotlight. One woman believed in me more than my entire family combined. Sebastian reached out the same week. It started with a voice memo. Stilted, tentative. "Hey Zara, can we talk? Off the record?" He met me at an oyster bar near the Battery, the kind of spot tourists miss but locals love. He looked tired. The newlywed glow had dimmed. I could see the weight behind his eyes, the quiet dread of a man realizing the marriage came with fine print. He pushed a folder across the table. "I did a full audit of Thomas & Company's books." I raised an eyebrow. "On your honeymoon?" He didn't smile. "There's some irregularities. Backdating contracts, inflated invoice margins, fabricated supplier delays, all rubber stamped by Brielle, or at least her digital signature." I blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she's bleeding the company to fund her brand. Influencer deals, paid promos, fake giveaways. She's using the business like it's her purse." I felt my jaw tighten. "Dad knows." "Dad's too busy trying to keep the magazine features coming. He thinks she's bringing in a younger audience." That's when I leaned in. "Sebastian, I'm building something of my own. Want to help?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at me, really looked, like someone realizing the floor beneath them was actually a ceiling for someone else. Then he said the most dangerous thing a man in a fragile marriage can say, "I think I already am." A week later, he resigned from Thomas & Company, citing personal conflict of interest and restructuring fatigue. The statement was clinical. The silence from the family group chat was radioactive. Dad called me that night. You stole my son-in-law. I laughed. Not bitter, just amazed. Funny, I thought you gave away everything at the wedding. You're being petty. No, Dad, I said calmly. I'm being precise. Studio ZT's website launched quietly, almost whisper soft. No press release, no influencer tour, just a clean design, a bold mission statement, function meets soul, design with purpose, and a signature that said, founded by Zara Thomas. CEO, Sebastian Green. Brielle didn't notice. Not right away. She was busy redecorating a lake house she hadn't paid for, documenting every throw pillow with captions like "Manifest your lifestyle, babe." But clients started noticing. A vineyard owner from Napa reached out, then a wellness retreat in Sedona, then the national chain. Eviva Hotels, a mid-luxury hospitality group with 48 locations and counting, wanted to rebrand their interiors for all U.S. properties by Q1 next year. Budget: $14.2 million. They'd seen my work, the real work, the blueprints that Brielle had once called too minimal for engagement. They wanted me, not the brand, not the family name, me. The hardest part? Keeping it quiet. Sebastian worked from a temporary office on Broad Street. I kept our main meetings off hours. We communicated through encrypted Slack channels and used code names for clients. It felt absurd and thrilling, like we were running some undercover revolution in designer shoes. Still, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop. It dropped in the most Brielle way possible, loudly, publicly, and with filtered lighting. She was hosting a Southern Glam Summer Showcase, sponsored by a wallpaper brand and attended by exactly the kind of minor celebrities who think being flown to Charleston counts as community building. She stood in front of a 12-foot floral arch and announced a new partnership with European designers to the stars. She claimed exclusivity, claimed originality, except the samples she showed, they were mine, from my early drafts, the ones she once rejected as too sterile. I watched the live stream with a kind of eerie calm. Sebastian texted me, "Is this real?" I replied, "It's real stupid if that counts." But what pushed me from calm to cold fury was what came next. Dad was in the crowd, applauding, hugging her, saying to a local paper, "My daughters, both brilliant in their own ways, but Brielle, she's got the magic touch." He didn't even say my name. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I filed an intellectual property claim and let my lawyers handle the cease and desist. Then I focused on the pitch to Aviva. It was Sebastian's idea to make it bold. "We don't just want the contract," he said. "We want the identity. Let's propose a full design evolution: aesthetics, lighting systems, sustainability ratings, custom furnishings." That's when I realized he wasn't just competent. He was visionary. For years, Brielle had kept him boxed into her brand, like a good-looking logo. But with me, he was strategic, agile, brilliant. He was the CEO I'd never had, and the partner I didn't know I needed. Not romantically, I'm not telling that kind of story, but in a way that made me feel like I wasn't alone in the fight anymore. By late fall, Studio ZT had 11 full-time employees, 2 regional design contracts, a press feature in Veranda, and a pending deal that could make us the most sought-after design firm in the Southeast. And Brielle? She posted a video in tears, claiming, "People are trying to sabotage my dream." I didn't watch the whole thing. I was busy choosing tile samples for Aviva's flagship Miami property. Act 3 ends not with a bang, not yet, but with a look. One afternoon, I passed my father on King Street. He didn't see me. He was sitting outside a cafe, scrolling on his phone, and beside him was Brielle. Her face was tight. Her voice was raised. She waved a paper in his face. Maybe the cease and desist, maybe a tax bill, maybe just the proof of what happens when you gift someone a crown, but not the kingdom beneath it. I walked on. No need to interrupt. My side door was now the front entrance, and theirs, well, let's just say the foundation was cracking. You don't realize you're winning until the silence from your enemies starts to echo. Studio ZT wasn't just surviving, it was rising, roaring. We went from a whisper in Charleston to a full-throated shout on the East Coast design circuit. Within 6 months, our footprint expanded faster than I'd dreamed. And it wasn't just pretty Pinterest boards and charming Southern touches. This was strategy, precision, partnership. It started with the Vela Group, a boutique hotel chain trying to revamp their image for a younger, more design-conscious traveler. They found us through word of mouth. Well, through Valerie, one of my earliest private clients who just so happened to sit on Vela's board. "Zara," she told me, her voice low and amused, "your sister sent us mood boards. You sent us market reports. That's the difference." The contract landed in my inbox at 6:13 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember because I was still at the office, and Sebastian brought in a second coffee without me asking, like he always did when I was in the zone. I clicked on the email, saw the number, and my hands went numb. $8.2 million. That was the projected first-year value of our partnership with Vela. Multiple properties across 3 states. Full creative control, quarterly retainers, bonuses tied to occupancy metrics. I didn't cry, not really. But I did sit there for a good minute, holding the ceramic edge of my mug like it was an anchor. I'd lived so many years believing I wasn't the type of woman things happened for. I was the behind-the-scenes one, the spreadsheet whisperer, the quiet sister who didn't take selfies in bathtubs or show up in lifestyle magazines. But now they came to me. The ripple effect was immediate. Clients started rescheduling their meetings with Thomas and Company to explore other visions. By August, we were averaging 4 new proposals per week, most of them big budget, restaurants, office spaces, eco-retreats, and we were turning some away, politely, firmly. Meanwhile, Brielle's brand started to show cracks. She'd built it like an Instagram post, curated, polished, and hollow beneath the surface. Her waiting list shrank. Clients grumbled about poor communication. Designers whispered about her absentee leadership. I didn't gloat. That's not who I am. But I did notice, and I did keep moving forward. Then came Charleston Design Week, the holy grail. Every player, every tastemaker, every legacy name showed up. For a decade, Thomas and Company had treated it like their stage. Dad used to call it Brielle's runway. But this year, the spotlight shifted. We secured a 1,200 square foot pavilion right at the entrance of the event. Prime real estate, courtesy of our new Vela partnership. I poured my soul into that space. It wasn't just about chairs and chandeliers. It was a narrative. We recreated 3 micro spaces from Vela's properties: a coastal suite in Savannah, a mountaintop bar in Asheville, a minimalist lobby in Atlanta with soft golden wood and black iron beams. Each space told a story, and those stories came with results. Behind the scenes, Sebastian worked like a conductor. Contracts, logistics, a whole media team prepping press kits and live social coverage. He'd grown into the role of CEO like it was custom cut for him. That morning when we arrived, he looked at me and said, "Today we stop whispering." The foot traffic didn't just come, it poured in. Within hours, we were trending on Twitter. I watched influencers pose with our installations, listened to older designers nod in approval, saw editors from design magazines discreetly photograph our material swatches. Midway through the day, Sebastian took the mic for our scheduled keynote. I stepped back, letting him take the floor, proud and private as always. He didn't hold a script. "Before Studio ZT was a company," he said, his voice deep and clear, "it was a notebook. Scribbled sketches, margin notes, late-night coffee-stained napkins, Zara Thomas's vision of what design could become when you stop mimicking trends and start solving problems." He looked over at me, not in a cheesy romantic way, in a true way. Recognition. Respect. "She didn't just co-found this firm. She is the mind behind the brand. And she taught me what it means to build something that lasts longer than your name on a door." The room erupted. I blinked fast and kept my chin high, but something stung in my chest. Not pain, just the sudden weight of being seen. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted her. Brielle. She stood at the edge of the pavilion, just outside the main arch. She wasn't alone. Dad was there too, his face set in stone. Their booth, 2 rows over, looked deserted. A flimsy setup with over-styled floral arrangements and velvet cushions that felt out of place in the real world. Brielle's expression wasn't angry, not exactly. It was stunned. Like someone who's just realized they've lost a game they didn't know they were playing. She didn't step forward. Neither did he. They just watched. After the keynote, Sebastian and I met backstage for a breath of air. He offered me a glass of water, then chuckled, glancing at the phone buzzing in his pocket. "Brielle's just sent her 3rd text. What does it say?" He raised an eyebrow. "You blindsided me. You're a traitor." I let out a low laugh. "Did you reply?" He shook his head. "I work for Zara Thomas. That's my reply." I didn't ask for more. Later that evening, after the crowd thinned and the pavilion lights dimmed, I took one final walk through the space. My heels echoed against the polished floors. I touched the edge of the minimalist counter I'd designed and felt its weight, the metaphor of it. I'd been handed nothing. But I had built everything, and they were only just beginning to see it. When the letter arrived, it didn't surprise me. Brielle had always been impulsive, especially when she felt cornered. It was hand-delivered by a courier in a glossy white envelope, her name embossed across the top like a wedding invitation. I opened it at my desk. Sebastian leaned over my shoulder, reading as I read. A cease and desist. Claims of intellectual property theft. Allegations that Sebastian had breached fiduciary duties, that I'd misled clients, that Studio ZT had unlawfully poached partnerships from Thomas and Company. I didn't laugh. I didn't even sigh. I simply said, "She's spiraling." Sebastian nodded, flipping through the pages, eyes scanning the legal language. And clearly, she didn't talk to a real lawyer before sending this. The next few days were a flurry of meetings, not with lawyers, though I had the best ready, but with clients, with our board, with our legal counsel, and with the media team who'd already heard whispers of the conflict. We moved fast, with clarity, with grace. I wanted no mudslinging, no public spectacle, and then the silence. No follow-up, no press, no formal filing in court. What I did receive, about a week later, was a phone call from her attorney's assistant. Nervous, apologetic. "Miss Thomas, we've reviewed the documents, and it appears many of Ms. Brielle Thomas Rivera's ownership claims are, well, let's just say, not enforceable. Turns out, our dear father had never fully transferred the shares. No final contracts, no shareholder filings with the state, no executed board minutes. Just a wedding toast, a printed certificate, and a lot of assumptions. She didn't own the company. She never had. And Sebastian? His employment agreement had no non-compete clause, no IP restrictions, because Brielle had skipped those details too. Probably thought she'd just marry him and that'd be enough. It was all smoke and mirrors. And now it was dissolving. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. Just free. The next day, Dad called. I ignored the first one, the second. But the third came with a voicemail. "Zara, sweetheart, can we talk? Please." I listened to it once, then again. His voice sounded tired. He used to sound invincible, the way little girls hear thunder and think it's their father's voice in the sky. Now he sounded small. I met him at the cafe near the old office. He arrived early, looked older than I remembered, not in years, but in weight. He didn't hug me. He just said, "I made a mess." I stirred my tea, said nothing. "She's your sister," he continued. "Family's supposed to mean something." I tilted my head. "It does. That's why it hurts." He looked down. I thought she'd need the help more. I didn't think you needed anything from me." I smiled, soft but steady. "I didn't," I said. "That was the point." He reached for my hand. I didn't stop him, but I didn't hold back either. "You gave away a business like a centerpiece," I said, my voice calm. "I built one like a cathedral." He swallowed hard. "I'm proud of you." I stood, smoothing my blazer. "Good. Then you won't mind watching me speak tonight." The keynote was already buzzing when we arrived. Sebastian and I, shoulder to shoulder, a quiet force. Our names were printed together on the program, Zara Thomas and Sebastian Rivera, building a brand that lasts. I stepped onto the stage, heels clicking softly. The lights warmed my skin, the room fell still. Faces in every row. Investors, students, journalists, women who wanted to know what it felt like to not apologize for their power. I spoke about design, yes. But more than that, I spoke about vision, about how legacy isn't something you're handed. It's something you forge. Not from marble and steel, but from integrity, resilience, and choosing every single day not to let someone else write your story. When I finished, the room stood. Every last one. In the front row, I saw my father. He clapped, slowly, then quickly, eyes glassy. Next to him sat an empty chair. Brielle's. She never showed. In the weeks that followed, Thomas & Company was quietly sold off. A real estate developer bought the rights, stripped it down, repurposed the name for some soulless condo staging firm. Brielle rebranded as a lifestyle coach, last I heard. A newsletter and a YouTube channel, heavy on hashtags, light on clients. Me? I kept building. Studio ZT expanded into New York. We launched a scholarship for women in architecture. Sebastian and I spoke at 3 conferences that fall. He never stopped referring to me as the brain and the soul of this company. Sometimes I catch myself looking back, not out of nostalgia, but out of amazement. I remember being the girl who took the calls, managed the schedules, handed the mic to others. And now, I am the one holding the mic. Thank you so much for listening. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told your dream was too much, then you're exactly who I told this for. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the story hit home for you. Like the video if you want more empowering stories like this one. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. From my story to yours, keep building your cathedral, one brick at a time.